In a small, quiet town, at the very end of a lonely street, there stood an old house. It was big and mysterious, covered in creeping ivy, with tall windows that seemed to watch the world. The wind whispered through its cracks, carrying secrets from the past. 14-year-old Emily had never lived in a house like this before. She had spent her whole life in a bright, modern apartment in the city. But now, everything has changed. As she stepped out of the taxi, she stared at the house with wide eyes. It looked like something from an old storybook, grand, yet full of mystery. A giant oak tree stood in the yard, its branches stretching over the house as if protecting it. Emily's parents had sent her to live with her Aunt Margaret for a whole year. They had been given an amazing job opportunity that required them to travel across the world. They wanted to take Emily, but moving from country to country would make school impossible for her. So, after much thought, they decided she would stay with Margaret. Aunt Margaret was kind but quiet. She had lived in this house for as long as Emily could remember. They had visited her a few times when she was younger, and Emily had always been fascinated by the place. The old bookshelves, the ticking grandfather clock, the way the trees outside seemed to whisper. But now, this was her home. That first night, after a warm meal, Emily lay in bed, listening to the wind outside. There was something about the house, something she couldn't explain. It felt as if it was waiting for her to discover its secrets. Emily couldn't ignore her curiosity. A few days later, after dinner, she started exploring the house. She ran her fingers over the wooden railings and peeked into forgotten rooms. At the end of a hallway, she found something strange, an old bookshelf that seemed out of place. When she pushed against it, it moved. Behind it, there was a narrow staircase covered in dust. Taking a deep breath, Emily climbed up the stairs. They creaked beneath her feet. At the top, she found a wooden door. She pushed it open and stepped into the attic. The attic was full of old trunks, dusty books, and cobweb-covered paintings. But in the farthest corner, something caught her eye, a tall mirror covered with a silk cloth. The frame was carved with tiny moons and stars. It looked ancient, yet untouched by time. Heart pounding, Emily reached out and pulled the cloth away. A cloud of dust filled the air. When it settled, she saw herself in the mirror's glass. But then, something changed. The reflection shimmered. Instead of her own image, she saw something else, a bright classroom, where she was laughing beside a girl she had never met before. Then, just as quickly, the image disappeared. Emily frowned. What had she just seen? The next day, when she walked into her new school, her heart stopped. There, sitting at a desk, was the girl from the mirror. Her name was Sophie. Within days, they became close friends, just as the mirror had shown. Emily couldn't believe it. Could the mirror show the future? She had to know more. That night, she returned to the attic. She stood in front of the mirror, waiting, and again, it showed her something. A lost puppy, shivering in the rain. The next afternoon, Emily went to the park. Her breath caught when she saw the same puppy, just as the mirror had predicted. It was true. The mirror could see the future. At first, Emily was thrilled. Every night, she returned to the attic, eager for more glimpses of what was to come. But then, something strange happened. Each time she saw a vision, something small would go missing. First, it was a bracelet. Then, a notebook. A favorite hairpin. At first, she ignored it. But one morning, when she picked up her paintbrush, she felt a chill of horror. She had forgotten how to paint. The skill she had spent years perfecting was gone. Panicked, Emily ran to the attic and stared at the mirror. It looked different now, darker. The moons and stars carved into the frame seemed twisted, almost like vines. She realized the truth. The mirror was not just showing the future, it was taking something in return. It was a trade. Emily knew she had to stop, but the temptation was too strong. She told herself she could control it. that if she was careful, she wouldn't lose anything important. She was wrong. As weeks passed, Emily and Sophie became inseparable. Sophie often visited Emily's house after school. One afternoon, while Emily went to get them snacks, Sophie wandered upstairs. She noticed the attic door was slightly open. Curious, she stepped inside. The room smelled of dust and old secrets, and then she saw it, the mirror. Something about it called to her. She pulled the cloth away, and the mirror flickered to life. Sophie gasped as she saw an image, herself standing on a stage, receiving a round of applause at a school event. It felt so real she could almost hear the clapping. Emily returned just in time to see Sophie staring into the mirror. Her heart sank. "Sophie!" she cried. "You have to stop! You don't know what this mirror does." But Sophie wouldn't listen. From that day on, she found ways to sneak into the attic. She became obsessed, visiting the mirror every chance she got. And soon, she started losing things too. Her ability to remember song lyrics, her talent for sketching, even small, cherished childhood memories. Emily watched in horror as Sophie changed. She was still Sophie, but something was missing. Pieces of her were disappearing. One evening, Emily found Sophie in the attic again. The mirror was showing her an incredible future. Sophie as class president, admired by everyone. Emily saw the hunger in Sophie's eyes. She knew if Sophie didn't stop, she would lose everything. With a deep breath, Emily made a decision. She grabbed the silk cloth and threw it over the mirror. The glow disappeared. The attic fell silent. Sophie turned, eyes wide with anger. "Why did you do that? I need to see." "No," Emily said firmly. "You don't." Tears filled Sophie's eyes, but she saw the fear in Emily's expression, and she understood. The mirror had taken enough. That night, Emily dragged an old trunk in front of the mirror, blocking it from view. She didn't destroy it. Some things were too powerful to break, but she made sure no one else would fall into its trap. From that day on, she and Sophie chose to live in the present. The future was meant to be a mystery, and when they stopped trying to control it, they discovered something wonderful. True happiness was found in the unknown, because life's beauty lay in the surprises that each new day would bring. Some secrets are better left undiscovered. The future is meant to unfold naturally. When we try to control it, we risk losing the very things that make us who we are. The end.